Alright, so I am re-recording this video because we had issues with sound with this one. So here I am re-recording it. So this topic is on conclusion paragraphs. And if you go to your Module 2, you'll find this document entitled Conclusion Guidelines. So go ahead and download it just by clicking here. And also download this one here. Sample conclusion, okay? So let's go to this first one, and I'm going to read to you what it says, and then we'll talk about it. And I actually found this left behind in the classroom, and I think it's brilliant and super helpful. So it says this: when creating a concluding paragraph, provide the reader with an overview of the main ideas you discussed, and highlight the progression of your thought process. Offer solutions and next steps, or present new questions that your paper generated. Don't only restate your thesis, but show the significance of your synthesis of the information. Make connections. Okay, well, that word synthesis means to bring together, and in our case as writers, we synthesize other sources when we put other sources together to create a thesis statement, a central project, and we're engaged in conversation with these outside sources. Okay, so if, for example, we're writing an essay where it was for the first intro that talked about fossil fuels being having a damaging impact on our environment and being limited, right? So they were underscoring, hey, why the heck is it that we use fossil fuels so much, and they damage our environment, and there's only so much of them to go around. But let's say, well, actually, what they do present is the microscopic algae as an alternative fuel source, or if you were going to talk about electric vehicles, whatever you're going to go for. But let's stick with electric vehicles, for example. So when you're synthesizing sources, that's when you would bring in outside information to prove what is the cost of maintenance of an electric vehicle, and how does that compare to the cost of, say, maintenance of a car that uses fossil fuels. So you can bring in statistics to support your argument of why we should switch over to an electric car. Kind of like a thing where you need to prove that pros outweigh the cons. So you can prove that with numbers, with statistics, and just with outside information. So that's what it means to synthesize. It's to bring together outside sources into a larger conversation, much like a lawyer does when they're bringing in other witnesses to the stand and exhibits. They're synthesizing this information. They're bringing it together so that they can be deliberate with their own argument. So similarly, with us, with when we're writing essays and with our thesis statements, we're synthesizing in order to make connections to prove our central argument. Okay, so that's the word synthesis. So, creating a conclusion. Restate your thesis using different words. The restatement should have the same meaning as the original thesis statement. Remind the reader about the main ideas in your work. This is huge right here. Answer the so what question. Use the following questions to guide your work. Did you propose any solutions? Are there solutions yet to be discovered? What questions still need to be answered? So what? What is the larger significance of the topic you chose to write about? What should the reader do or think about reading your paper? So all this that we're saying, ultimately, conclusion is just what it sounds like. It's the takeaway. So your reader has just finished reading your article in the Los Angeles Times about why you should switch over to an electric car and ditch your fossil fuel car, okay? So the conclusion is the ultimate takeaway. Talk to the reader directly. That's fine. What do you want them to take away from this essay? And underscore it. Bring it home, just bring it home. That's the way that I see it. You don't have to compulsorily restate your thesis verbatim, but it's just like the final thing that they're going to take away. And this is answering this so what is awesome. And that's what separates the stronger writers from the weaker ones. When you're able to prove why it's why what you're arguing for is significant. why it's a big deal, why should the reader care? Prove it to them. And that's what your whole job is, with whatever your thesis is. Prove it, prove it, prove it, prove it. The conclusion is that final takeaway, that last, piece de resistance. So here, guys, are the conclusion paragraphs that the students who wrote those papers that we were looking at for the intros actually did. Okay, so we're going to look at 1 and 3 because that's what we looked at. So this was their final, conclusion paragraph for the one about the fossil fuels and switching over to the microscopic algae as an alternative energy source. So check this out. We have a limited amount of time to pull back from the amount of finite fuels that we consume and to look for renewable sources of energy like biofuels produced from algae. With serious consequences to come from using fossil fuels, such as strong greenhouse effects, creative solutions are required. Change is required to occur at the highest levels of power to ensure that money is being directed to the right facets in order to ensure preservation of the environment. Algae can be a strong foundation as a renewable source of energy. This is a topic that still requires time and intellect to be fully explored. So this student right here said, where is that? Are there solutions yet to be discovered? So this solution is admitting and recognizing that it's such a complex and large issue that there's still further investigation that needs to be done. So not everything has been figured out about it, and it's kind of like a research pending type thing. And if you're able to do that, guys, then it's pretty strong because you're able to recognize the complexity of your issue and how many dimensions and facets and areas there still are to be explored. And that's actually really exciting because as a reader, your mind is just blown. You're like, wow, this is such a big topic. Okay, so that was the first one. This one is about the one of the veterans transitioning into civilian life. So this is what it says. We need to make sure that we're helping out our veterans. They gave up a portion of their lives to keep this country safe and to preserve the freedoms that we as Americans take full advantage of and use to their full potential. If the government does not want to do anything to help these people out, then we as a society must do what we can to help them out, whether it's raising questions or raising our voices and taking action. These people gave their lives. The least we could do is lend a helping hand. So remember, that's like the final takeaway for us as the reader from this essay. So if you can view it in that way, it's like the final takeaway. What do you want the reader to finally take away? Which is your central argument. And why should they care? Why should they care? Tell them. Prove it to them. Okay, so that's the conclusion. And so if you have questions about conclusions, essays, conclusion paragraphs, then feel free to shoot me a message, and or even you can take a look at our online source. I believe there's one on conclusions. This one, this Lumen one, I believe has one. But yeah, I hope this helps. And so remember, it's the final takeaway for your reader. That's the conclusion paragraph. It's like the final punch. Bring it home.